Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, where I will be interviewing two of our FFDA volunteers on the topic of isolation and the effects on mental health. So, first, can we start with a brief introduction about yourself, your name, your pronouns, as well as how you're connected to FFDA, and anything else that you would like to share?
My name's Kurt Morris, and I use the he series pronouns. And I volunteered with Families for Depression Awareness since 2017, mainly as a blogger, and I've done some content programming. And in the past few years, I've spoken about loneliness at some colleges and universities around the area. And also, I'm working on my master's in social work right now as well at Simmons University.
Hi everyone, my name is Anisa. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am from Miami, Florida, and I am a volunteer at FFDA. I do it virtually and I make content sometimes for our Instagram.
Thank you. We're just going to go right into it, starting with Kurt. Can you describe your experiences with loneliness when you were a teen?
Yeah, it's interesting. My loneliness is so tied in with my mental health. My experiences in high school, it was really weird because I didn't know anything about mental illness really much, and I was getting depressed and anxious, and that made me feel really, sad sometimes and nervous. And even though I had some friends, it felt like I couldn't describe who, I was and what I was really feeling. So, I'd go out with people, or there'd be people who'd want to hang out with me, but I pushed a lot of them away because I just didn't feel like I could connect with them because I couldn't explain what was going on in my head, my mental health, my anxiety. And so that really caused the difference and made me feel really lonely. It's kind of that thing of like how you can be around people, but still feel lonely. A lot of people don't think that, but that's definitely the case. And mental illness definitely did that for me.
And Anissa, as you're currently in high school, have you experienced loneliness during your time, and what has that looked like for you?
I think I've experienced loneliness several times in high school through different parts of it. In ninth grade, I was at a new school. All my best friends were at an entirely different school. I didn't really know that many people there. So it was hard for me to kind of like make friends and I would make friends. I just didn't quite fit in, or I didn't quite like, I felt that way. And sometimes I would feel alone. And then as I got through high school, I made friends and I talked to more people. But also through high school, a lot of people can feel like really like overwhelmed with all of the work we have, or like sometimes it can be really hard. So I would be struggling with like my work and also with my health. I'd get really anxious, or like I just with school and friends and life, and I would just kind of isolate myself when I was doing my work. So I'd be in my room all the time, and by the time I would finish my work, my family would be asleep or my friends would all be busy, or it just felt really alone in that moment because I was like, I don't know what to do because I feel very anxious, but I also feel so overwhelmed with all of this work. And then in different ways through COVID and isolation, that has impacted my social life. And sometimes I would feel really lonely because I wasn't able to speak to others or in other moments. And I know other teenagers might, and anyone really might relate to it, is also having like a significant other. Like I would see everyone on TV or like my friends, and it would make me feel alone because I didn't have a significant other and I don't, but it was just, it was a feeling of loneliness that would also occur there too.
I feel like myself as a college student and remembering back in high school, there is such a pressure to be a well rounded student. And you're right, it is kind of hard to balance all of those things. And especially as a student right now with COVID, the fact that, you're missing out on some opportunities, like how do you make those connections still? But you mentioned about fitting in. So for the both of you, what ways did you feel that you struggled to fit in school?
Um, a lot of ways. I mean, partially, like I said, the mental health issue was a big deal. I was also just, I was always kind of a weird kid. Like I listened to weird music. I hung out with kids that like to skateboard and ride their BMX bikes and listen to like punk music. And so like we were just kind of outcasts. And we were also like really nice kids, but like we were just kind of the weirdos at school. And so sometimes you wear that as a badge of honor, and you got your group of friends, you got like your buddies and like your crew, and uh, they make you feel like you fit in, but then you still acknowledge, like, in the larger scheme of things, you're not really fitting in with a lot of your peers. And that can really make you feel lonely too, to try to figure out, like, I want to be myself, I want to be unique, but I also kind of want to fit in too. And it's hard, to, it's a struggle. Yeah, it really is a struggle. And that was something that definitely affected me.
What about you, Anisa?
I agree with that. Like, I feel like I was very like I wanted to be myself, but then I was like, I have to fit in, and like I would try and be someone that I wasn't, or I would see like I wasn't very popular, or like I have like a small group of friends which I'm really happy with, but I would see all of these kids or like and other people my age, and they would be really popular, going to parties, going to the mall together, like having fun. And I would see all of that. And I didn't fit in with them because I wasn't really invited to those things, or it wasn't like I couldn't really go out with them. Like I wasn't really allowed to. And it was just hard because like sometimes I would be with people and I wasn't who I am. Like I would pretend to be someone I wasn't in order to fit in. But then I would sit there and be unhappy because I'm like, am I being myself or am I being someone that I'm not? So it was a moment where I'd like think and I'd be like, you're not exactly fitting in because you're not being who you are, and then it's just like it's just different in a way that I would try and be someone and try and fit in, and it would be difficult for me to like see all of these people like fitting in or having their huge friend groups, but it was just like it was difficult in the sense that I felt like I needed to be someone else in order to fit in or make friends.
I can definitely relate to that as well, especially with Kurt. I felt like my group of friends were like the misfits, and like you could probably tell by the hair that I was like really part of that group. But it does feel nice to know that like you can be yourself with them, but like still in a group, you feel like you get those worries because of like your mental health, and you get those insecurities, which makes it difficult. But are there any other factors that may have affected your ability to connect with others?
Well, I think for me, some of it was, there was a lot of like just teenage angst, like a lot of anger in my life, just like feeling frustrated, and not just because of like mental health issues, but just like being upset, feeling like I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do. And then sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm the only one that feels that way. And then you come to find out later in your life, you're like, oh no, everybody's that way in high school, pretty much. Like nobody really knows what they're doing. And a lot of people feel frustrated. A lot of people feel angry about their inability to know who they are. But then I think some of that too, there was this sense of, because of that, I would push people away, or my friends and I would push people away who maybe wanted to reach out, especially like caregivers and adults, other authority figures. And they would maybe want to connect with us, but we were like, you guys don't understand how we really are. You're like, you don't understand what's really going on in our lives. And so like, we didn't give those people an opportunity. And I think there were some adult figures in our lives who could have been really good allies for us, maybe helped us with mental health issues even, or just learn to enjoy and appreciate the things that we were enjoying and appreciate. But maybe there was some narrow-mindedness on our part. So I think that affected our ability to connect with others, especially our caregivers and other adults.
I agree. I definitely think that like in when we're teenagers and we're in high school, we feel a bit lost because there's so many different questions to ask. Like, I'm gonna be an adult in a few years, like what do I do? Or like how do I do this? And like and feeling a bit lost can also affect it. Like I felt lost with who I was, so then I would be someone that I wasn't, or I'd be um, a version of myself that I didn't want to be, or I wanted to be the best version of myself, but there's so many different things like, but I want to fit in with them, I want to be this, and it was just really hard. And I also think in a way COVID and more like now it's been more of an impact on like our social life and like how we communicate with others, because now everything is through a screen or through it's very hard to get together with other people, or due to social distance protocols and being safe. So it's harder in the sense that we feel more isolated and alone. And then we can't really have our friend groups or make new friends through, unless it's through virtual, of course, but it's harder now to like kind of fit in and kind of like be able to feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm surrounded by all these people, like I'm so happy to like be here and like I feel like I fit in. But it could just be difficult because you're through a screen or through you feel lost, or and so many different factors can play a role in this as well.
Right. I feel like with high school students currently in COVID, you can only imagine how difficult that makes every other emotion that usually comes around at that time for them so much
Mhm.
worse. And Kurt, you're not a high school student, but with
No,
COVID,
I'm
how
a
do
few
you,
years out.
right? Um, but with COVID, how do you feel that isolation impacts them now?
Well, I am definitely going to defer to you two
Mhm.
on this one since I have been out a few years. But I will just say from the high schoolers I know, people I've talked to, like my coworkers who have kids and stuff like that, it's been really, really rough on people, really difficult, especially for people who don't come from wealthy backgrounds, who can't afford, some of the opportunities that you see some people being able to do, like private, study pods and things like that. I think COVID, if anything, has been a reminder of the discrepancies between Black, Indigenous people of culture and white people, and that's what's really been showing up to me is just hearing and reading about all these kind of discrepancies. But I'm actually much more curious what you two have to say about it.
Nisa, if you'd like to add more.
Like in regard to like high school experience with COVID, I think that it's definitely been really hard on students, like, and teachers as well, because they're not able to connect
Mm-hmm.
with their students and see what's going on. And but as a student, I've suffered from burnout, and all of my assignments would be piling because it was all virtual, and we're having constant Zooms, sitting in front of the computer, getting tired. Like every day, kind of just started to feel the same in a sense, and you're isolated from your friends. You can't see them at school or like unless you go in physically, but a lot of students are still doing virtual. But it can be hard because it feels isolating. You're away from your friends, your teachers are assigning this work, and it's harder to communicate with teachers now because it's all virtual and you're not able to go up to them in person. But you've got a sense of isolation and loss of motivation, burnout. Like, definitely think students are struggling with that now because it's been really hard to connect and it's been really hard to be able to do our assignments. We're at home, we're in a pandemic. It's really hard to do a lot of things. So we feel restricted and we feel like we're losing motivation because every day starts to kind of feel the same.
I feel like that's been the biggest issue of mine where the days do kind of blur together and like my laptop like used to be like what I would look forward to opening like once I was done with like all my schoolwork and like watch what I want to watch.
Yeah.
Now it's like my eyes hurt. Like I don't want to look at this anymore. Like it's difficult that you really don't get to separate your school life from home life because it's
Mm-hmm.
all just taking place like from your room or like from your house and there's no real end to the day. And you're right, it does really affect motivation as well and burnout. And because the resources are still available to you from your school, but it's very different, and I feel like maybe even harder for students to want to ask for help. And I'm like one of those people where if I'm struggling, I like want to figure it out on my own. But it's definitely harder now having to really go out of your way to get help. And not everyone is really made for online courses.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just really highlights a lot of those disadvantages that people have, which is very unfortunate. But for our next question, for Kurt, being able to look back, what do you wish you could tell the teen version of yourself when you were struggling with feelings of loneliness?
Oh, that poor kid. I feel bad for him. But, as I said before, a lot of it has to do with the mental health issues. So I think that's the first thing I would do is say, let's address those. I didn't start seeing a therapist until I was 21. And but I started feeling like depressed when I was 13, 14 years old. And I just wonder, like, what would my life have been like if I had been going to a therapist when I was 14, 15, really any time in there in high school? Like, would things have been really changing? But I think even if I didn't feel if I didn't have those, mental health issues and just felt lonely in general, I would have encouraged myself to just get out there and do more things. There were a lot of things I liked to do, but I just didn't do them. And I really don't know why. I think it was mainly just the mental health issues. Um, I would encourage people to just kind of try new things. One of the consistent things in my life has been the idea of quantity over quality. So I'm much more interested in trying as many different things and doing as many different things, going as many different places as I can, as opposed to, being the best at everything at the few things I do. So I think it wasn't always that way, but it's a good way to meet new people by trying different things. And if you don't like it, don't keep doing it. Do the things you enjoy doing and go from there. But I think that's a good way to meet people to make new friends and acquaintances. It hasn't always happened, but I have met a lot of people by just trying a lot of different things. And it helps me understand myself better too, to know what I like and what I don't like.
Right. I was orientation leader at Emmanuel, and that is one of the first things I tell a lot of the incoming first year students, that you really have to like throw yourself into seeing what you like before, to kind of like get your feet on the ground and kind of stable, because that change from being a high school student to college and just like in general every year, I feel like there will always be obstacles, but definitely seeking out something that can kind of keep you distracted in a way. And you're right, it may not
Yeah.
be the best thing that, like, you may not be the best at it, but at least you're doing something, and that can definitely help in the long run. So I think that's great advice. And Anisa, does anything that Kurt said like stand out to you, or do you have any tips to share with teens who may be struggling?
I definitely think that was really like strong and powerful advice. I love that. I agree 100%. I definitely think that like seeking help as well when we feel like there might be something wrong, or just being able to talk to someone like a professional or caregivers and parents is it's definitely really good, and I definitely think that it helps a lot, and then you're able to talk about how you feel, and maybe that can help you and make you stronger. And it is something really hard to do, but at the end of the day, it always makes you stronger. So I think that was really good advice. And also trying new things and being able to step out of our comfort zones. I love that, because for me personally, I'm very scared to step out of my comfort zone. I kind of tiptoe around things. I'm like, oh, maybe not, but I try my best to like meet new people, especially is one that I want to do more often, and be able to try new things and not having to be so perfect at everything, but rather have such like a wide variety of things that I can do and just have fun in and enjoy, rather than having to be stick to something that I have to be really perfect in and get stressed over, but just to try new things and be able to explore life and enjoy everything there is to it. I definitely think it just to be yourself and be able to explore and feel comfortable in your own skin, and just work towards every day's a new day, work towards making it better than yesterday, or just trying your best.
Yeah, that was great advice. And Kurt, you mentioned how back when you were a teen, with your mental health, like you would push people away and push
Mhm.
caregivers away. So, from what you've experienced then and what you've learned now, what can parents and other caregivers do to help teens combat isolation right now?
Yeah, it's a fine line. I would imagine. I don't have any kids. I have a four-legged child, but she's pretty easy to tell what to do most of the time. But as far as actual kids, I don't have any, and I would think it's a fine line between encouragement and pressure. It's you want to encourage the kid to get together with people, but you don't really want to, push them too hard to the point where they get angry with you. And I think really, like a lot of things in life, it's important to listen. You got to be there to listen. Let them know that, let your teen know that they're not the only ones going through what they're feeling in regards to isolation. And perhaps share some of how you felt as a parent or a caregiver. Show, like, be open with your kid and say, like, hey, I've dealt with isolation too, I've dealt with loneliness too, um, and what did you do about it? And I also think it's important to create an environment where your teen's encouraged to interact with others. If they're feeling overwhelmed with other responsibilities, They may think that socializing is like the first thing they need to cut out, but it's important because it's part of your mental health. So I think that's something that would be good to do as well. But yeah, I mean, there's also the opportunity to just kind of push certain ideas about activities. Yeah, I don't say push. There's certain things that you can suggest for activities, and those, I mean, we can talk more about those if you want. But I think the most important thing as a caregiver is to listen and to not be afraid to open up with some of your experiences, so that your child feels like they have the opportunity to kind of feel more comfortable opening up themselves.
Yeah, if you'd like to delve more into that, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was, as far as ideas, I was just going to say, you know, obviously this is going to be seen by people all over the place. So some of the ideas are weather dependent, but you know, it's winter here in Massachusetts. You can go outside still and have a socially distanced masked walk. You can play in the snow, like revert to your childhood and like enjoy it, you know, go to a playground. Do something fun like sledding, something you haven't maybe done in a while since you were a kid. So I would definitely recommend those kind of things. And then I know it was interesting to hear both of you talk about being kind of burned out on screen time, because there is also that aspect to it. But I think it sounds like that should maybe be used kind of sparingly. I like the idea too of just doing like video and phone dates, especially if you're tired of video. Do a phone date. I have a phone date with a friend of mine every week, and we just talk for a couple hours, catch up. It's something I really look forward to, and it's a way for us to connect to one another, so I don't feel totally isolated.
Those are great tips and definitely very COVID safe for the
Yes.
times we're in now.
Yeah.
And Anisa, for yourself, any tips or any experiences of your own that have helped you with your loneliness that a caregiver has been able to support you?
Yes, I think that being able to validate your child's emotions are really important. Like telling them, hey, like this is okay to feel, like you're gonna be okay, like your feelings are valid. And being open to listening, like Kurt said, just listening and seeing what's going on and trying your best to help rather through pressure and you know, just to be a moral support and be understanding of your child and what's going on, and be like, I need to be this with them, or I need to help them through this, and be gentle and kind, and really see what's going on from their aspect, like see it, put yourself in their shoes. I definitely think that sometimes my dad will be like, hey, like let's go for a walk, or you know, try and accompany them, or be like, do you want to watch a movie, or just ask them little things, like little things that you can do to spend time with them. And sometimes like even allowing like a friend to come over socially distance with mask on and stuff, just to be able to let your child have like some form of like physical like contact, or like distance from someone that they're close to, or just being able to spend time with someone instead of it being through like a screen. And then also of course like encouraging like communication with friends and being like, did you talk to this person today, or how are you, or sometimes even asking how they're feeling and what's going on inside their mind, to be able to see it from their aspect and try and help them as much as possible.
Great, thank you. And do either of you have any final thoughts you want to share? Any comments?
Yeah, one thing I tell students when I speak with them, this is mainly college students, but I think this would apply to high school students as well. It's that it's totally okay to feel lonely. Like there's nothing wrong with it. I think the more we talk about it, the less stigma there will be about it. It's like the same way with mental illness as well. You know, I'm okay admitting I get lonely sometimes, and it's gotten better over the years. I've kind of learned how to be more comfortable with myself, but you know, I'm dealing with this pandemic like everybody, and there have been times, especially more recently, it's been a long time, and I miss seeing my friends and my family in person, and I would like to be able to go and hug them, you know, and like, you know, be able to shake their hand or something, like have some kind of form of like physical affection with them. And so it's okay to admit this kind of thing, even if you feel like I'm a monk half the time, you know, like I live by myself, and like I feel like I'm good to be solitary and I don't need anybody. But even the toughest of us, like we need some affection and some attention from people. So don't be afraid to admit that. it's amazing how many people feel lonely in this world, and you're with a lot of good company if you're that way. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we can learn to reach out and make those connections when we want to.
Great, thank you.
I definitely agree with that, like finding support in other people as well, because sometimes we want to be alone and deal with things by ourselves, but then sometimes there might be things where we can't deal with those things by ourselves and we need some support. I definitely think now with quarantine and this pandemic, it's really taught me to be able to find the love in myself and know that I am a person and start to love my own company sometimes and just explore and maybe go for a walk by myself, start journaling, like just kind of like talking to myself and keeping myself company. Even though sometimes I can feel lonely, I'll call a friend or, like I'll talk to my best friend and we'll just talk things out and, just be able to find comfort in one another is something that is so powerful, but also being able to find comfort in yourself and being your own best friend in a way, being yourself and knowing yourself and getting to know yourself, even though times can get really hard, just know that everything does work out and everything will be okay.
Great, thank you both for sharing.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
For more information on loneliness and tips for caregivers, you can check out our newsletter and other resources at our website, familyaware.org. Thank you for watching.